One of my childhood homes had a balcony that was attached to both my mother's bedroom and mine via big glass doors in each of our rooms. Next to the balcony are 2 trees, one of which I used to climb up and down from the balcony. One night when my brother and mother weren't home, I was about 13 and I was reading in bed with a very dim reading light. I heard what sounded like something moving in one of the trees outside, but this didn't worry me as possums and bats are very common in our area. Now, I had thin curtains on the glass doors that separated my room and the balcony. The doors faced out towards the street where street lamp light was always visible through my curtains. Shortly after hearing the tree rustling noises, I see a shadow slowly move past the doors, at which point I immediately turn off my reading light and freeze like a deer in the headlights. The shadow is tall, so it isn't a neighbour kid, and it wasn't all of my 5-foot mother. The person moved slowly, creeping as though they were trying not to be noticed. They wouldn't likely be able to see into my room, but I could see them thanks to the streetlights behind them. They moved past my doors and out of sight. I sat there unable to move or even think about what to do, than be absolutely still. That is, until I heard another sound. The sound of someone trying to open a glass door, my mum's door to the balcony. I didn't know if she had locked them or not, but I wasn't taking any chances. I moved as quickly and as silently as I could to my bedroom door and locked it. I listened for what the person was doing now. They were still jiggling the glass door handle, but it sounded like the doors weren't opening. I felt relief. This person surely couldn't get in, and all I had to do was wait for them to realise that, and then they would leave, right? Well, I heard light footsteps move back along the balcony to my set of glass doors until I saw his shadow stop directly in front of them. Again, I froze. He couldn't see me. He couldn't know I could see him. I saw a shadow of a hand reach up to my door's handle and my heart stopped. Had I actually locked those doors myself today? I was out there earlier. What if I forgot? The seconds leading up to him grabbing the handle felt like an eternity. But thankfully, when this person tried to open the door, it did not open. It was locked. I sighed such a sigh of relief, I was worried he had heard it. After this, he began pacing the length of the balcony. I didn't have a mobile, and the landline was at the other end of the house, but I was scared to take my eyes off him. I was silently crying and praying that they would just leave. Then I heard him stop moving. He then said, "I could just break the glass, you know." Before I could even process this, I saw car headlights turn around the corner of my street and then stop at the property. My mum was home. The person on the balcony moved out of sight, and then I heard a loud thump as they jumped off of it. When my mum came inside, I was hysterical and was barely coherent enough to tell her what had happened. Eventually I got the message across and she called the police. They never found or caught anyone, but a neighbour reported a truck in the street that matched the description of a truck that had been reported recently for attempted child abductions near my school, just 1 block away. Last night, I was lying in bed watching YouTube videos on my phone and falling asleep when I hear someone struggling with their lock next door, then silence, and then a different adjacent condo sounds like they're having trouble. This didn't sound right. I silently got out of bed and grabbed my MP9. Side note, my condo has an extremely open floor plan, all rooms open into the main room. Then my door, fidgeting, and then nothing. Then I see the outline of a man in the twilight at my cracked open window. I can see his silhouette through the blinds. I chamber around. He punched my screen out and tried to climb in. Had his head, 1 arm and 1 leg through. I still didn't fire. I dialed 911. Took almost 30 seconds to get someone with all these auto-attendant menus asking if I speak Spanish. All the while, I'm screaming, "Get the F out of my house." Someone call 911. Dispatch finally answers. I start shouting my address. Shouting, "Get the F out of my house. Home invasion in progress. I can't get out, and I will defend myself. Note, I live in Portland, Oregon. No duty to retreat." Here's where I screw up. I set the pistols down and grabbed my Mossberg 500 12 gauge, loaded with 00 buck. I racked the slide. In the moment I had hoped that the distinctive sound would show that I'm not messing around. He says, "I don't give a fuck." Well, I switched back to the MP and I practiced with it more, and I am more confident with it. Plus 17 shots versus 5. But stupidly switching weapons, I took my eyes off the target, left myself vulnerable. Big screw up. Could have had a really bad outcome. But he just stared at me, then left. And that was it. About a minute later, 3 cruisers roll up. Total time of incident from initially picking up my pistol to cops showing up was under 4 minutes. When seconds count, police are minutes away. Even with a pretty fast response time like that, I will also say that Portland PD have always been very professional when I've dealt with them. No complaints. Once statements were done and they left to canvass the area, I grabbed my Shield 9 and drove to my girlfriend's house for the night. The first home invasion happened in 1994. I was about 5 years old and we lived in a rough area. Housing Commission. I was in the lounge room with my new baby sister when a brick came smashing through the window next to us. The brick landed inside my sister's bassinet, but luckily she was unharmed. The next thing I remember is my parents hurrying myself and my 2 brothers upstairs, and then they told us to hide under our beds. I watched my dad get a knife and tape it to the end of a broom. They tried kicking our front door in, but they didn't succeed, and the police arrived and scared them off. Needless to say, we all slept in the same room that night. The second home invasion happened when I was 10 years old. I came home to my family going about their normal behaviour. My dad had had some friends over, and they were all at the kitchen table laughing and talking. It was about 7 p.m. For those in Australia, we were watching Home and Away. We used to watch that in the UK as well. Side note, anyway, my dad and his friends went into my parents' room while my mother, sister and older brother and one of my dad's friends stayed in the lounge room. After a few minutes we heard the sound of things falling over and bangs up against the wall. So we all looked up the hallway and out came my dad's friend holding a knife to his throat and demanding money. They cut our phone line and forced us into the same lounge, but keeping my dad in the same position. Terrified, my sister and I started crying uncontrollably. We were told to shut up or they would hurt us. We couldn't stop and I was stabbed in the top of my thigh. The scar today still looks like an indent. My dad convinced them all to go downstairs. All we heard was fighting and the front door slammed. My dad came back upstairs with a big cut across the top of his arm, saying they were gone. We all ran next door and called the police. My other brother stayed in his room the entire time and didn't even know it had happened because he had earphones in. I was working from home today, and my husband had to leave for the dentist right as the plumber arrived to work on the bathtub. No problem. The plumber has been here before, he's legit. I'm on a conference call with the customer. Plumber has to leave to get a part, comes back, fixes the tub, yay, then leaves. I'm still on the conference call on mute. Give the faucet a thorough check to make sure it certainly feels right. Sit down in front of the computer and the doorbell rings. I bet the plumber forgot something, like a tool. So I run to the door and I open it, and there is stood a strange person, with a strange smile on his face. I'm shorter than 5'1", and this person was close to 6 foot tall. Hello? Hello? Can I help you? Hello? He looks over my shoulder at the room behind me, and he starts trying to walk in. My door isn't fully opened. I'm blocking the entrance with my body, and he starts to walk into me like I'm not even there. I weigh about 120 pounds. And this person was well over 200. I threw my shoulder into his rather large belly and pushed back. You are not allowed in my house. He stepped back and I slammed the door. Then I realised the client had gone off mute. Hope they didn't hear that. I stayed on the call, very professional, answered all my client's questions. When the call ended, I called the cops. Now I'm scared. Was that a potential home invasion? The guy was huge. I have no idea who he was, and he certainly was not with the plumber, or the plumber. So the more I think about it, the more terrified I get, and the bigger he gets in my mind. I held it together through the call, but now I'm shaking. Am I overreacting to a stranger walking into my house? He wasn't even a Jehovah's Witness. He didn't even tell me anything other than hello, and tried to walk into my house, expecting me to move out of the way. How bizarre. I have a pretty big house. My room has a huge window where my bed is right next to it, so at night I usually stay up on my iPod on my bed with the window open. On the outside of my window there's the driveway where my dad's cars are parked. The window was closed that day and all the lights were off except for the red glow of my alarm clock. At around 3 a.m, I, for some reason, look out of my bedroom window and there's this guy about 5'8" in a big black sweater staring directly into my window. He's about 10 feet away from me and I'm staring right at his face. I thought he was going to run away, but I realised he can't see me. While all of this is happening, he's walking very slowly sideways, still looking right at my window. I run to my dad's room, wake him the F up, get a bat I had lying around, and run to the front door, which leads right out to the driveway. I unlock the door, turn the doorknob, and kick the shit out of the door, so he can clearly hear it. I walk outside to give him the time to run. I looked around and see my dad's car door was wide open. Also, the backyard motion-sensitive lights were on, which meant he ran around my house out the right side. No cops necessary, like a boss. At around 3 p.m. this afternoon, a group of guys attempted to break into my second-floor apartment while I was home. I was in my office on the computer when there was a knock at the front door. When I entered the door, there were these two guys stood there. They looked surprised when I answered and asked me if I had seen their dog. I told them no, said I would keep an eye out, and as I was walking back down the hall, I looked out of the window in time to see another guy climbing over the balcony. He saw me and climbed down real quick. I ran over, locked the door to the balcony, grabbed my phone, locked myself in the bathroom, and called the police. It was so scary. The worst part is that I live in a very small town in a pretty nice apartment on the second floor. There is no way these guys went unseen while climbing my balcony, as my balcony faces the central courtyard of our complex, and there were lots of people coming and going, yet no one bothered to question their actions. I no longer feel safe in my own home. It's hours later and I am still shaking. I just keep thinking about what would have happened if I had not answered the door. I could have walked out of the bathroom or something, right into a robbery. I used to sneak out of my bedroom window at night when I was a teenager. Our house was slightly away and lower than the road, so that you had to walk down a path to get to the front door. The path went right past my window, which faced the road, making it super easy for me to simply climb out and off into the night. Because of this bad habit, my mum used to quite often wake up in the middle of the night to come and check and make sure I was still in bed. One night, as I'm lying awake, I hear her get up. I can hear my neighbours outside making a fair bit of noise, so I knew she would come into my room thinking it was me climbing out of the window. I pretended to be asleep, but I could still hear her walking around the house, unsettled by the noises. I hear her go into the bathroom, which has a window facing out onto the side of the house. 2 seconds later, she is thundering down the hall, wrenches open the front door and starts screaming at the top of her lungs. I basically jump out of my skin. I have no idea what is going on. I hear people running and yelling, all the while my mum is standing and in her pyjamas, screeching her head off. While she had been in the bathroom, she distinctly heard people whispering loudly, and her immediate reaction was anger that there were people on our property. When she ripped open the door, she found about 4 people, all with their hoods over their heads and with heavy-duty torches in the middle of sneaking down on our path and either side of the house. Luckily, they just bolted when she screamed. I struggled to sleep in that room, where I could hear every little noise on the path outside until the day we moved out, certain that those people were going to return for whatever it was that they wanted.